Why should I trust you? What's the actual mechanism that protects me from your incentives? And before you answer, keep it grounded, not values talk. What do you actually do differently?
Right. So, I I guess to that question, if I get that question from candidates, I actually try to firstly explain how I do get paid in this transaction, right? So you come to me today asking for a job. I will suggest to you several opportunities, ideally, right? If they're available.
Hmm.
Let's just say you interview a few companies, things go well, you get an offer on the table, great. I do get paid if you accept that offer, and I will get paid on your yearly salary. So it's actually in my interest to get you as much money as possible, and I will get paid 35, between 30 and 40, sometimes 50% of your yearly salary. So let's just say you get an offer for 10 million yen. My incentive is between 3.5 and 5 million Japanese yen to get you that job. And you're saying, yes, I accept that job. So how can you trust me given the nature of that transaction is the question, right? And I think it's really important to
Mm.
define trust. Like there's
I
really,
appreciate that
yeah.
you're saying
Hmm.
that I appreciate that you're saying it plainly, but higher salary aligns you with me only on that one axis. What stops you from nudging me toward the role that's easiest to close instead of the one that's best for my career? And what can I actually control in that process?
Yeah, absolutely. And nothing. The answer is nothing. I have to make a living from this. And what I guarantee to people is that at the end of the day, I'm not going to push you into a role that I know you're going to hate and you will be miserable at, because then you'll be miserable, you will leave very quickly, and my client will also be very, very pissed. And eventually, my reputation takes a hit. I'm not part of a big agency that can afford to make many mistakes. I'm not being covered by a base salary every month. Like this is my reputation is everything in the market. But at the end of the day, I am absolutely incentivized for you to take a job that I represent. Now, what I make really a point of as well is I don't claim to know what's best for you. What I do is very simple. I network. I network for a living. I'm talking to people in my market, which is the deep tech, the deep tech market here in Japan, which is robotics, AI, and the space industry. And what I do is I constantly meet people within that industry, and I have discussions with them, trying to figure out if they're on the client side, what kind of people are they looking for, what kind of challenge are they trying to solve, and what are their bottlenecks in general. And then I meet a lot of talent, and same thing, I try to understand what they're doing, what they're interested in, and what might make them interested to move their current position. That's all I really do. The rest is then just connecting the dots. And at the end of the day, when the question comes of can you trust me or not, you can trust me that I'm extremely good at networking and I'm extremely good at collecting information in the market, but you shouldn't trust my judgment whether or not this position is the best fit for you. Like all I do is connecting the dots from a surface level and the data that I collect from you, right? What have you done? What are you interested in? And what are you aiming for salary wise? Those are kind of the information that I have. I will never claim to know what it is to walk in your shoes. I will never claim to know what it is to live your life. And I will definitely not claim to know what's the best next step for your career. So, whatever offer is being presented to you, that is the moment where you should probably trust your own judgment and not rely on trust of someone who's getting paid only if you say yes. And that's the reality of this transaction. So, I feel like that question, can you trust me as a recruiter? Yeah, you can trust me to bring in a certain type of value, but should you trust my judgment when it comes to a situation where I only get paid if you say yes? Absolutely not.
Okay, let me sit with that for a second from a candidate's point of view. That's more credible than trying to hand wave the incentive away. So you're basically saying use you for access and information, not for the decision. Then give me one concrete boundary. When would you tell me I can introduce you, but I shouldn't be the one telling you whether to accept? And if I decline, what control do I retain over my info or future introductions?
Right. I'm one of my strategies from day one, and my philosophies in recruitment is I am someone who's trying to work and have connections with as many companies as possible. And one thing that I make pretty clear my clients out there is that I'm never going to oversell what they do. This is not my job, it's their job. Like, I don't work there, and I don't claim to know what it is to work there, what it is like to work there. So at the end of the day, I present you a menu from which you're choosing, right? I'm going to try to have as many options as possible to increase my odds to win, and you picking one of my items on the menu. When it comes to you deciding, for example, to say, oh, I want to apply for this company, but I don't want you to kind of push me or represent me, there are two options. Either I'm going to introduce you as a friend and you take it from there. I'm just going to send an email to someone that I know there and I'll say, hey, I work with this person, but he doesn't want me to be a stakeholder in this introduction. So you guys take it from there. Or I'm as hands-off as you want me to be, right? Like, at the end of the day, all I share is my opinion. And my opinion is not necessarily evil. It's based on a lot of things that I see. But again, there's always the caveat that I do get paid. But I often have situations where I also tell people, like, you should probably not pursue this company, or you should probably not go for this company because you're currently looking to leave your current company for reason X. And I know for a fact that this company has issues with reason X. And so, look, at the end of the day, I trade two things. I trade my network and I trade my time, and I try to get the most leverage for as little time as possible. And I get paid money from my clients to save them as much time as possible. So it's in my interest also to make sure that you're not spending time talking to the wrong places, if that makes sense. And because I am so active in terms of business development, the menu I have to offer to people, so to speak, is getting wider and wider, making it easier and easier for me to simply navigate you through the menu and you pick whatever you want. Because at the end of the day, I don't care what you pick, I still win. And this is the model that I'm trying to develop since many years. This is one of the reasons I wanted to have my own recruitment agency, because now I'm not competing against the internal staff. If you interact with someone in a big company, for example, they're actually generally incentivized for you to pick only the companies that they can represent in their company. Meaning that if you talk to a recruiter that's pretty green, has not many clients in his big agency, he's going to really shove whatever he has in your throat, making sure you're not picking whatever his colleagues might have that might be better for you, but he's not making money on that. And so again, I think the smaller the organization you deal with as a recruitment agency, the more the incentives are truly aligned, if that makes sense.
I hear you. A wider menu still means it's your menu. Give me a public safe example of a time you advised someone away from an opportunity because it repeated the problem they were leaving. And then tell me exactly what you would and would not share with a company before I approve an introduction.
Right. So when it comes to the example, a few months ago, that's 2 months ago, I had one candidate. There was a company extremely interested in him for his Japanese skills. And they wanted to kind of put him in a situation where he was going to do a lot of customer-facing responsibilities, like more like a solution architect / sales engineering type of role. But the reason he wanted to leave his current company was because he wanted to become a lot more hands-on, spend a lot more time developing code and, I guess, interact with the engineering team. And when the company that I represent was selling him the role, they were kind of emphasizing like, oh, but you also spend a lot of time interacting, with your colleagues and working on developing code, but we do highly value your communication skills. And I told the candidate, look, they have 3 other roles open for that specific role. So what this tells me is that they're probably understaffed when it comes to, that kind of responsibility of solution architects. So they're probably expecting to hire more people, which will decrease the workload on that side of the project. But let's just assume the worst case scenario that they don't find anyone. Will you be comfortable doing roughly the exact same amount of engineering versus sales? And he said no to me. And then I was like, look, then you should probably not make a career decision joining that company based on the assumption that they will securely hire more people. Because even if they hire tomorrow other solution architects, it doesn't mean they will be as good as you. And at the end of the day, the company will maximize their current resources. And so we ended up rejecting that offer. Now, I was able to say this to him because I had another offer for him for a more hands-on role at another company. If I did not have that other role, would I have been able to be as transparent? I like to think yes, but then again, I have kids to feed and I have, a business to run, and I only get paid if he accepts the offer. So because of my business model and the ability for me to have so many clients around me, I'm kind of usually have several options for people. But then, yeah, this is one example. When it comes to the information that I will share to the client, I share everything that you allow me to share. So after a meeting, I will usually ask you like, hey, are you okay? Is there anything we have discussed about today that you don't want me to share? I'm not stupid. If you hate your current boss, I'm not going to go to my client and say he's leaving his company just because he hates his current boss. Like, this is not kind of stuff that we want to push forward. So I genuinely try to really help you, get the best chances of kickstarting the right conversations. At the end of the day, nobody's trying to trick anyone. You're not trying to trick a company in hiring you for what you're not, and we're not trying to have clients hire you for a job that isn't really there, right? Like, we're looking for long-term success, especially in a startup ecosystem. Wrong hiring is deadly. Anyway, yeah, that's my answer. Definitely went on a tangent.
Thanks. I'm holding that against the candidate lens for a moment. That example works because you named the risk, not just the upside. But I want the control to be operational, not just trust me to filter it. Before you contact any company, do I get to see and approve exactly what you share about me? And can I say no to an introduction without pressure or penalty?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I encourage people to say no, because if we make an introduction, we go from the assumption that you're genuinely interested in it. And when it comes to what I share to those companies, I usually share your resume. I tend to take away actually your name and the phone number in the beginning. So I actually don't disclose your personal information. And if they're interested, then we kind of take things to the next step. And I tend to also share, your current salary, your expected salary, to try to really make sure that everyone is on the same line. Again, if there's specific information you don't want me to share, you just, tell me. I tend to proactively fish for that kind of information because, not everyone is experienced with job hunting. But yeah, there's no issues at all. If there's something you don't want to share, or you end up saying, hey, actually, I'm not interested in being introduced to that company, by all means. Again, like, I'm not part of a big machine where I have to, hit KPIs every week. I'm happy to help if people want to be helped. I'm happy to step away if people don't see value in what I do. I tend to be, as transparent as possible as a recruiter. And yeah.
Okay. I'm not being asked to trust you to decide for me, but to trust you conditionally to give me informed access with control staying with me. That's the line I wanted.
Yeah. Do you have any other concerns?
One last one, and it's a skeptical one. You said your read on the market is strong, but it's still your read. How do you help me test what you say against the people I'd actually work with instead of me just taking your word for it?
Can you repeat that question and maybe frame it slightly differently just to make sure I understand it?
Sure. Give me a second to reframe it. So, if you tell me this company is a good fit, how do I check that for myself before accepting? I mean, directly with the hiring manager and team rather than just trusting your assessment?
Right. Okay. Yeah. This is a great question, and something I actually proactively do. I tend to organize one extra meeting between you and my client where you ask all your questions, because one of the flaws of the interview process is usually, especially in startups, is there's little time for you to ask your questions. And so we usually go through round one, where it's like more like a casual chat. You get a chance to share a little bit what you care about. You get a chance to share a little bit, maybe some questions that you have, but nothing really deep. Round two is more technical. Round three is like more like a final setup where you meet, the executives. And round four tends to be like an offer meeting. Sometimes everything is done in 3 rounds as well. It really depends on the company. But what I try to do is what I try to do is, there's like, not always an offer meeting. Sometimes they just send me an offer. what I try to do is to always set up an offer meeting where it's really all about you asking all the questions. And we usually spend around 20, 30 minutes discussing on like which concerns do you have, what reasons did you have for leaving, for looking to leave your current company, and are we 100% assured that this is not going to be the case again in this company? So I'm kind of really trying to help you look at the red flags and, you know, unturn the final stones to make sure there's no hidden poop there, right? And so we do organize that extra meeting, usually with, you know, team members, not necessarily hiring managers, but like with team members, if that makes sense. So you can kind of really start to have a taste of like, oh, when I say yes, this is the people I work with, and they're now reassuring me. And so, you know, and sometimes we even organize another meeting, like two extra meetings. Like at the end of the day, I get incentivized if you stay at a place long term. I don't want a situation where you leave after a month or if you're unhappy, because then something went wrong, and I am, as this middleman, still responsible to a certain degree. I'm not the one running the interviews, but yeah.
Great. Let me weigh that briefly. That's a practical safeguard. You're making space for me to test the role with the actual team against the reasons I'm thinking of leaving before I decide. I'd still make the call myself, but that would let me verify instead of just trust.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, I hope this is helpful. You know, I try to be as transparent as possible as a recruiter. There's a lot of questions that people might have. Feel free to drop them in the comments or reach out to me directly to ask. But yeah, I think, you know, trust is important, but I think you can grab a lot of value from people before trusting them, and because of that value, you tend to stack up, and your situation overall improves thanks to being in contact with the right recruiter. Trust then builds up naturally. I specialize in hiring for deep tech startups here in Japan, here in Tokyo. Julie, my sister and business partner, same thing. I generally believe we're good at what we do. We're not perfect. We keep improving. So we're always also open to hear what we can do better. Cheers.